A standard American semi-truck sits on a wheelbase of around 220 inches. That's the proven engineering baseline. So when a 1992 Kenworth K100 stretches past 420 inches, nearly double, the question isn't just why. It's how a steel chassis survives at that length, and what compels someone to push a working truck so far beyond anything it was ever designed to be. From the factory, American semi-tractors are built to a precise set of measurements. The wheelbase, the distance from the center of the front axle to the center of the rear drive axles, sits at the heart of this geometry. For most long-haul trucks on U.S. highways, that number falls from 200 to 220 inches. These dimensions are not arbitrary. A 220-inch wheelbase strikes a careful balance, enough length to distribute weight for a 53-foot trailer, but short enough to squeeze through tight turns at freight depots and city intersections. Fleet operators and manufacturers have settled on this range after decades of road testing and regulatory shifts. The Federal Bridge Formula, first adopted in the 1970s, set limits on axle spacing and gross vehicle weight, shaping what became the industry standard. A Peterbilt 359 or Kenworth K100 in its stock form typically leaves the factory at just over 18 feet from axle to axle, roomy enough for a sleeper cab, yet nimble when docking at a crowded terminal. At these lengths, steel frames are engineered for predictable stress. Cross members and boxed rails keep the chassis rigid, while suspensions, often leaf springs or basic air ride, are tuned for stability under shifting loads. Drive lines, brake lines, and electrical harnesses are all sized for this baseline. The result is a platform that prioritizes reliability, safety, and compliance. This baseline defines the starting point. Every inch added beyond 220 inches pushes the truck further from the world of mass-produced utility and deeper into a realm where engineering, ambition, and personal taste collide. In a brightly lit garage on the outskirts of Des Moines, a 1992 Kenworth K100E sits stretched across two bays, its frame gleaming under overhead lights. The owner-operator, hands marked by years on the road, stands beside a tape measure drawn from the front axle to the farthest drive hub. The numbers read out just shy of 420 inches. For this K100, the factory wheelbase once measured a modest 220 inches, now nearly doubled. The transformation is not just steel and welds, it is a statement. The owner's voice carries a quiet pride when describing the decision to go beyond the norm, citing not only the desire for a smoother ride, but the unmistakable presence the truck commands at highway rest stops and truck shows alike. A few hundred miles away, in a small fabrication shop outside Louisville, a Peterbilt 359 is up on stands, its midsection braced and exposed. The lead fabricator, a second-generation builder, walks the chassis with a caliper and a notepad, recording precise measurements before the first cut. The original frame, measured at 210 inches, will soon be extended to over 350 inches. The process is less about brute force and more about craftsmanship. Every splice, every reinforcement, every weld a reflection of the builder's reputation. He points out where custom cross members will go, how boxed steel liners will reinforce the new span, and where the air ride suspension will be mounted for both comfort and show floor stance. For both owner and builder, the numbers on the tape measure mean more than compliance or capacity. They are proof of ambition, risk, and identity. Evidence that in this world, a truck's wheelbase can be as much about personal legacy as it is about physics. The first step in doubling a truck's wheelbase begins with the frame itself. In the fabrication shop, the rails are stripped down to bare steel, every bracket and cross member removed, leaving a skeletal spine ready for surgery. The lead fabricator measures and marks the spot for the cut, typically behind the sleeper or just ahead of the rear axles, areas chosen for their straight, uniform rail sections. Instead of a simple square cut, the saw bites in at a 45-degree angle. This approach, favored by experienced builders, spreads out stress across the steel's grain, reducing the risk of cracks forming at the joint. Once separated, custom glove channels, heavy steel liners, are slid deep inside each rail. These inserts are cut to match the original frame's thickness and profile, acting as an internal brace that ties the old and new sections together. Fish plates, shaped like elongated diamonds, are bolted and welded across the outside of the joint, further distributing loads and shielding the splice from fatigue. Each weld is laid hot and slow with deep penetration to ensure the metal fuses as a single piece. Reinforcement does not stop at the joint. New cross members are fabricated and spaced every 3 feet along the extended section, bolted and welded to both the main rails and glove channels. Some shops add X-bracing or gussets for extra torsional stiffness, especially under the 5th wheel or between drive axles. The maximum drive shaft length per section is kept to 71 inches. Any longer, and vibration becomes a threat. Everything is squared and aligned with string lines and angle iron before final welding. This level of precision is what keeps a 35-foot stretch from twisting or snapping under the weight of a loaded trailer, mile after mile. Engine choice in these stretched trucks is deliberate. Drivetrain specialist Mike Torres stands by a Peterbilt's open bay, pointing to the Cummins X15, a favorite alongside the Caterpillar C16. Both engines are known for their low-end torque, delivering between 1,600 to 1,850 pound-feet right off idle. That's essential when extra frame length adds weight and pushes the drive shaft to its limits. Torres notes, "You need torque down low, or you're just fighting physics." But muscle alone does not move a 35-foot frame efficiently. The Eaton Fuller 18-speed manual transmission with its splitter and range selector becomes the key. It lets drivers stack gears for slow, controlled movement or smooth highway cruising. Torres demonstrates the shift pattern with low gears for parade crawls and double overdrive for relaxed highway runs at 70 miles per hour, even with curb weights topping 30,000 pounds. The wide gear spread keeps the engine in its power band, no matter the load or length. Suspension technician Lisa Grant focuses on the AR ride system. She shows a control panel behind the cab. One switch drops airbag pressure to 40 pounds per square inch, lowering the truck for show. Another brings it up to 120 pounds per square inch, raising the ride height for travel. Dump valves allow for quick adjustments, letting the chassis drop or rise by several inches in seconds. This is not just for looks. The system keeps the long frame level, balances axle loads, and prevents scraping on uneven pavement. With these systems, a 420-inch wheelbase truck is not just a spectacle, it is fully roadworthy, ready for freight or the spotlight. Stretching a semi's wheelbase transforms it into what some drivers call a highway train. The payoff on open roads is obvious. A longer chassis tracks straight, soaking up bumps and smoothing out the ride, especially at speed. Axle spacing can be optimized to meet federal weight limits, spreading heavy loads across more pavement and keeping the rig compliant at the scales. But every foot added to the frame brings new challenges. The turning radius grows dramatically. What once slipped into tight docks now needs wide open space to maneuver. Backing into a city terminal or threading through a crowded truck stop becomes an exercise in patience and planning. The bending moment across the chassis increases, demanding more from every weld and cross member. Reinforced rails and extra bracing fight against flex, but the laws of physics do not budge. Drivetrain specialist Mike Torres says, "You get a smoother ride, but you pay for it every time you turn the wheel." At truck shows from Iowa to Kentucky, a stretched Kenworth or Peterbilt draws a crowd before the hood even opens. Paint glints, chrome stacks reflect the midday sun, and every inch of frame becomes a canvas for personal expression. For many builders, the payoff isn't measured in payload or miles per gallon, but in the nods from fellow drivers and the scores from show judges. A judge at the Mid-America Trucking Show describes the scoring sheet: fit and finish, creativity, and the ability to stand out in a sea of polished rigs. Prestige in this world is its own currency. The owner of the 420-inch K100 says, "When you pull in, people remember your truck. That's why I built it this way." On these highways, a stretched wheelbase becomes a rolling signature. Part engineering, part art, all pride. Today's ultra-long rigs, reinforced steel stretched beyond 400 inches, powered by Cummins or Caterpillar C16 engines, and shifting through 18-speed manual transmissions, redefine what a truck can be. In the end, function meets self-expression on America's highways. The open road is not just an engineering challenge, it is a canvas. Share your thoughts below.